Now we have heads
will
of state
further
arriving
weaken
at the
global
venue
economy.
of the G20. This is Spanish Prime Minister Rajoy has already arrived at the venue of the International Convention Center in Hangzhou. This is the live shot from the venue convention center. This is the Hangzhou city will work together with all the G20 members towards an innovative, invigorated, interconnected, and inclusive growth. This is Thai Prime Minister. And we just saw Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy. Now is the Thai Prime Minister, who's just arrived at the summit. And Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong from Singapore has showed up at the International Convention Center. Singapore is not a G20 member country, but is invited by Chinese president to show up. And Singapore is a very important Asian economy. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong just arrived. He was sworn in office in 2004. Of course, we all know his father's Lee Kuan Yew. And this is Justin Trudeau, Canadian Prime Minister. This is Trudeau's first visit to China since he took office last year. Besides Hangzhou, Trudeau's tour also includes stops in Beijing, Shanghai, and Hong Kong SAR. We all know his father initiated the diplomatic ties establishment with China together with Premier Zhou Enlai back then. And Trudeau said on his trip he would strive for a closer, more balanced relationship between Canada and China, which can unlock the untapped close. Now we have Prime Minister Shinzo Abe from Japan. Abe said China, South Korea, and Japan account for 1/4 of the global economy. That's why it is important for the cooperation among South Korea, Japan, and China. And now we have European Council President Donald Tusk. European Union is a member of G20 as one economic entity. European Council is a strategic body that provides the Union with general political directions and priorities and act as a collective presidency. And China is the second trading partner of the EU. Trade volume reached 500 billion euros back in 2015. And now we have President Idriss Déby of Chad. President Déby has been invited to the G20 summit as the current chair of the African Union. The Africa's fifth largest country is rich in gold and uranium and stands to benefit from its recently acquired status as oil exporting state. To revive its economy, Chad's government has been trying to improve its business environment. Now we have Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. But this is Turnbull's second visit to China since he took office in 2015. During his visit to China earlier, Turnbull led a delegation of 2,000 business people in a bid to expand business cooperation between the two. And both signed memorandums of understanding on sport and tourism. And China is Australia's biggest trading partner with an annual trade worth more than 110 billion US dollars over the last 2 years. And we have another European representative, Juncker, Mr. Juncker, European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker. But the European Commission is the executive body of the EU. It is responsible for proposing legislation, implementing decisions making, upholding the EU treaties, and managing the day-to-day business of the EU. The Commissioner of EU stressed that the combined economies of EU and China account for 1/3 of global output. That shows how important Europe is to China. He also said bilateral trade had grown substantially, and China is playing an important and constructive role at a global level in the context of G20. And now we have Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi coming to the convention center, and this is the Renzi's second visit since he took office in 2014. He took office, he was only 39. Italy was hit by earthquake last month, killed 300 people. But the international community has been showing great sympathy towards Italy during the earthquake. And now we have President Bongyan Virachit of Laos. Laos is the ASEAN chair for 2016. Lao President Virachit represents the organization of the Southeast Asian nations at the G20 summit. But the 10 member states account for nearly 1/10 of the world's population. The combined ASEAN GDP in 2015 makes it the world's 5th largest economy, worth nearly $3 trillion. Well, this year marks the 25th anniversary of dialogue between China and ASEAN. Now we have Brazilian President Michel Temer. He just resumed his office several days ago. But Temer is now the Brazilian president after the Senate voted on August 31st for the parliamentary removal of the former President Dilma Rousseff. Temer says he would take the opportunity of the G20 summit to improve his country's image. And he says universality in terms of foreign policy is very important. And now we have Mr. Nursultan Nazarbayev of Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan's president is paying a 5-day working visit to China, began on Thursday. Since President Xi took office, he has paid 2 state visits to the Central Asian countries. During his visit to Kazakhstan in 2013, Mr. Xi raised the idea of One Belt, One Road, Silk Road Economic Belt Initiative. And now we have President of Senegal, Macky Sall. Well, Senegal is a core member of the Economic Community of West African States. The country is now coordinating an economic development program within the African Union. Ahead of the summit, Senegal's Commerce Minister said that he believed the summit will be a great chance for Senegal to represent the African nations and help draw attention to the concerns of development. And we have President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi from Egypt. It is the first time that Egypt has ever joined in the G20 summit. But experts believe the country's participation as guest of honor will help its economy and attract more investment. It is also an opportunity to boost Egyptian-Chinese economic partnership. The two countries have been enjoying strong ties, and this year marks the 60th anniversary of the establishment of ties. Egypt was the first Arab state to establish diplomatic relations with China. And now we have Argentine President Mauricio Macri. Well, this is his first visit to China since taking office in 2015. Argentina is bidding for the host country of the G20 summit. The Argentine government says this is a very important goal for their foreign policy. Well, the Argentine Chamber of Commerce says a little over 73% of the country's trade is with G20 countries. And Argentina is one of the world's leading agri-food producers. As one of the Latin American members of G20, Argentina looks to take the chance to deepen South-South cooperation at the G20 summit. And we have now another motorcade arriving at the International Convention Center, the main venue for the G20 summit in Hangzhou, a very magnificent building over there. And now we have Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto. Mexico hosted the 7th G20 in Los Cabos town in 2012. During that summit, G20 members agreed to contribute over $450 billion to the IMF in order to help the global effort overcome the financial crises. And an action plan to strengthen the fiscal and monetary policy was also delivered at that summit. Mexico and China have an opportunity to take one step forward in agricultural cooperation at the summit in Hangzhou. And now we have Indonesian President Joko Widodo coming over to the summit. This is Widodo's third visit to China as president. His last visit was in 2015, when he also attended the Boao Forum for Asia. Indonesia is the only country in ASEAN to be included in the G20. But the country's GDP growth is roughly 5% in 2015, ranking third among all the G20 members. According to Indonesia's Investment Coordination Board, the country has gained over $1 billion of foreign direct investment from China. That's a 500% increase from last year. And industries, says China and Indonesia, have common interests and similar positions in strengthening economic cooperation. Another motorcade is streaming in front of the International Convention Center, representing South Africa. This is Jacob Zuma, President Jacob Zuma. And actually, this is the fifth time Zuma visited China since he took office in 2009. As the only African member of the G20, South Africa is expected to raise issues on weak economic growth, terrorism, and underdevelopment, which affect Africa and the global South. South African officials say the summit would take place as the world is facing sluggish growth, with some countries like South Africa facing downgrades by rating agencies. But the country is also a member of the BRICS group of 5 emerging economies, the other 4 members, of course, Brazil, China, India, Russia. And South Africa joined the group in 2010. The BRICS summit is now routinely held in the sidelines of the G20 summit. And this morning, President Xi attended the BRICS summit. Another motorcade showing up. This time we have the French delegation arriving. This is Hollande's third visit to China since he took office 4 years ago. France has been hit hard by terror attacks in recent months. In July, 86 people were killed and more than 300 wounded in the southern city of Nice. At this year's G20, Hollande is expected to talk about issues like counterterrorism and refugee crisis. But France is the first Western country to establish diplomatic relations with China. Paris is also the major Western power, established a comprehensive strategic partnership with Beijing. Both countries are expected to further promote bilateral relations at the G20 summit. But next year we'll probably expect another presidential election in France. And France, we understand, hosted the G20 summit back in 2011. In nuclear energy, aviation, France and China have a lot to join hands with. And also China is looking at France to internationalize its currency, maybe as a hub for the yuan businesses. And people in Hangzhou lining up the streets to welcome the delegations of foreign dignitaries arriving. We understand that Hangzhou is well known for West Lake. That's why the motorcades have been carrying the dignitaries, carrying over the bridge, and then coming down to the other side of the Qiantang River where the International Expo Center has been. This city has a 5,000-year history. That's why it has a robust history and culture, and that's something that can serve the dignitaries very well. And we have German Chancellor Angela Merkel. This is Merkel's 10th visit to China since she took office in 2005. 10 visits to China, that's more than anyone in the West. The number shows how close China and Germany have become in the past decade. Actually, over the years, Germany remained China's biggest trading partner within the EU. Trade volume close to that of Britain, France, and Italy combined. Germany's strong economic performance makes growth rate a lesser concern for Merkel, but her frustration comes from the ongoing refugee crisis. Well, Berlin has been one of the major advocates in the European Union to accept more and more of refugees, but a deteriorating security in the country and culture clashes probably has posed severe challenges to that policy and her political future. As leaders of the world's major economies gather in Hangzhou, the summit is an opportunity for Merkel to talk about the relations between Germany and China. We have another motorcade arriving representing the Republic of Korea. All the ladies are coming. South Korea's capital Seoul hosted the 5th G20 summit in 2010. And now President Park Geun-hye has arrived. At that meeting, leaders agreed to develop guidelines for addressing huge current account imbalances. Of course, South Korea is also a member of the OECD and a founding member of APEC and East Asia Summit. For the first time in G20 history, this year's Hangzhou Summit will be adding innovation as a topic for discussions. The South Korean experts say China is the engine for economic development in Asia, as it contributes 30 to 50% to the continent's economic growth. But of course, China and South Korea have been at odds over the deployment of THAAD anti-missile system recently. That could be a complicating factor. The report measures of national innovation competitiveness of 19 G20 economies are based on their performance in 5 major innovation areas comprised of foundation, environment, input, output, and sustainability. And now we have Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The last time he was in China was for state visit in May. Well, Economic Affairs Ministers of India says the country's focus of the G20 will be on global structural reforms to generate more jobs and spur inclusive growth. Well, India could ask for G20 members to bring more investment to the country and make good use of its manpower. Well, India is a founding member of the BRICS groups of the 5 emerging economies. In a China-India financial dialogue in August, the two countries agreed to increase dialogue and cooperate within the G20 framework. They also agreed to build platforms for financial interactions for fully using the AIIB, the BRICS Development Bank, and the BRICS Contingency Reserve Arrangement to enhance cooperation. You're now watching the live broadcast of the G20 summit in Hangzhou, and this year there are 4 keywords that all start with the letter I for this year's summit in Hangzhou. That's innovative, invigorated, interconnected, and inclusive. Each of them have their own meaning. Of course, innovation comes first, and that's what President Xi mentioned at the opening of the B20 meeting yesterday. That's the world needs more innovation to sustain growth. And growth is what the world economy has been asking for, because sluggish growth has been the major problem and challenge the whole world has been facing. And that's why the G20 leaders need to talk about how to bring the world out of sluggish growth with some actions. And China hopes the G20 members will enhance the reform of the international financial institution as well, improve the monetary system, and strengthen financial cooperation. We have another delegation arriving at the venue at the International Convention Center. This is the Turkey delegation, represented by Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Well, this is Erdogan's second visit to China as president. Last year's G20 summit was held in Antalya province in Turkey. It reflected a strong emphasis on inclusivity and developmental issues on sustained development goals, energy access, climate change, and refugee crises. And for the first time in the G20 history, Hangzhou summit will add innovation. President Erdogan said Turkey was an important site on Asian Silk Road. Turkey is a supporter of China's Belt and Road Initiative. He expressed hopes that Turkey and China can deepen their cooperation under the framework of the Belt and Road Initiative. And political analysts and foreign affairs experts say the country of Turkey is facing many challenges, including, of course, domestic politics, Turkish-Russian ties, terrorism, the Syrian civil war, refugee crises. Turkey says it hopes to take the chance to try to resolve some diplomatic issues through bilateral and multilateral meeting at the G20 summit. We understand in the Antalya summit in G20, there is a strong focus on inclusivity and sustainable development. And this is carried on at the Hangzhou summit, this time in Hangzhou. And for the first time, the G20 report will measure the national innovation competitiveness of all the different G20 economies based on their performance in major innovation that will comprise the foundation, environment, input, and output. The Group of 20 is an international forum, we understand, for the world's largest economies. The group was established at the G7 finance ministers meeting in 1999, and founded with the aim of promoting high-level talks aimed at international finance and economic growth. And the inaugural meeting was held later that year in Berlin. Following that, ministers and central bank governors from the G20 members gather every year with a response to the 2008 financial crisis. The G20 was elevated to the leaders level and had its first airing in Washington, D.C. in 2008. And the summit brings together heads of state of government, in addition to members, finance ministers, and central bank governors. What will happen then is President Xi will meet the G20 economy leaders at the front gate, and they will have a front group photo inside the building. And then they will go to the fourth floor where the summit meeting will take place. You're now looking at the convention center, the venue for the G20 summit in Hangzhou. In a distance, we're expecting more G20 economy leaders to descend on this venue very soon. Well, as I just mentioned, different countries have their different agendas at this year's G20 summit. The problem is, how can they align their interests and agendas? They have different priorities. Do you think they will come down and have a sober talks and come up with a rational plan?
Well, I'm sure there's going to be sober talks, which is good news. G20 leaders, after all, as Mr. Zhang said, it present 80% of global GDP. And I think the good news is that they actually do reforms, 150 major ones since 2008. At the same time, whenever they come back home, they raise trade barriers. So I think there is...
And also political blowbacks within their country.
Yeah, so to me, sometimes G20 looks like it's preventing the worst.
Preventing the worst.
Yes.
Hoping for the best.
And hoping for the best, but not necessarily really restructuring the world economies. And it's a good communication platform, but we have to put it in perspective. Everybody's facing domestic challenges.
And what do you think the most difficult challenge the G20 country faced?
I think is slowing economy. It really is a lack of demand globally. It is the urge by domestic constituencies to raise protectionism. As Mr. Zhang said, the US elections are vital. Neither of the candidates has spoken up for globalization.
Maybe different signals will be sent
So
out.
I think it's actually, we're in a phase of bad news for globalization.
We have the arrival of another delegation coming to the convention center representing Saudi Arabia. That's Deputy Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman representing Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia's Deputy Crown acts as Saudi Arabia's current Deputy Prime Minister and Defense Minister. And Saudi Arabia is the only Arab country in the G20, making it an important party in the Middle East, as well as major power in the international energy sector. But China is Saudi Arabia's largest trading partner. Saudi Arabia is China's largest energy supplier, as well as largest trading partner in the Middle East and Africa. Trade volume between the two countries reached $51 billion back in 2015. And during Xi's visit to Saudi Arabia, January this year, the two sides agreed to build comprehensive strategic partnership. Meanwhile, the meeting between Intergovernmental Joint Committee between China and Saudi Arabia has been held recently. It represents the relations between the two have reached a new milestone. Now we have another delegation arriving, apparently a very large one. Looking at the motorcade, it seems it's the United States delegation. This will probably be President Obama's last visit to Asia as President of the United States. And it's the third visit to China, his 11th trip to Asia, since he took office in 2009. He championed a policy of rebalancing to Asia, which is very controversial in Asia. But the U.S. is the largest economy, of course, in G20. And it has hosted two summits in 2008 and 2009. That's probably why the G20 mechanism began to take shape. The White House said Obama will hold talks with President Xi. Actually, they did, and the two world leaders talked about a lot of range of issues. The White House added that Obama's trip will highlight the president's commitment to the G20 as the premier forum for economic cooperation, as well as the U.S. rebalance of Asia-Pacific. 2016 marks Obama's final G20 appearance as U.S. president. As we understand, there is a presidential election. The result will be known in November, and that will probably decide the direction of the U.S. under the leadership of the new president. And now we have the delegation of the United Kingdom. Prime Minister Theresa May. This is May's first visit to China since replacing David Cameron as the new leader of the UK following the controversial Brexit. She's wearing all red, very promising color for Theresa May. Maybe she shows some confidence for the G20 mechanism. Hopefully it will work even after Brexit. During a G20 meeting earlier in Chengdu, world financial chiefs agreed that UK's decision to leave the European Union puts the world economy at great risks. And before the meeting, the International Monetary Fund downgraded the forecast for economic growth this year from 1.9 to 1.7%. Obviously, May wants to get rid of that prediction and bring British economy back on track. President Xi will meet each and every one of them. This is UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and other international organization leaders will be followed by heads of state then. This is our chairman of the G20's Financial Stability Board, Mark Joseph Carney. And head of the International Labor Organization, Mr. Guy Ryder, Director General.
国际货币基金组织总裁拉加德
IMF chief Christine Lagarde. This is Lagarde's third visit to China this year. Lagarde attended the G20 finance ministers and the bank governors meeting earlier this year in Chengdu. And Lagarde praised China's idea of adding inclusiveness to its
世界银行
agenda.
行长金庸
And we have World Bank President Jim Yong Kim. This is Kim's fifth visit to China since he took office. And Kim expanded cooperation with Beijing in areas like health sector and global
经
economic
济合作与
sustainability.
发展组织秘书长古里亚
And this is Secretary General of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, Jose Guria Trevino. The OECD is an intergovernmental economic organization based in French capital Paris, and it has been an active partner of the G20 to strengthen global economy. OECD works with G20, carrying out tasks mandated
沙特阿
by
拉
its
伯王
members.
储继承人穆罕默德
And then President Xi will meet with leaders attending this year's summit one by one. This is Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince
新加
Salman,
坡总理李显龙
Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong.
"世界贸易组织总干事阿泽维多
And this is WTO Secretary General Roberto Advido.
西班牙首相拉霍伊
And we have Spanish Prime Minister Mr. Mariano Rajoy. Spain is not a member of the G20, but it has always been invited to attend the G20 summit, and the same this
泰
time
国
at
总理巴育
Hangzhou. President Xi meeting Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha of Thailand. Thailand is attending G20 as chair of the Group of 77. Well, it was established in 1964 as the largest intergovernmental organization of developing countries in the UN system. And it serves as a platform for developing countries to build better
欧洲委员
economic
会主席容
cooperation
克
and development. Mr. Juncker, representing European Union Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker as the Commission President. And the Commission is the executive body of the EU.
欧洲理事会主席图斯克
And European Council President Donald Tusk. European Union is a member of G20 as one economic entity, but it represents all the EU members. It a strategic body provides Union with
澳大利亚总理
directions
特
and
恩伯尔
priorities. Malcolm Turnbull of Australia, Prime Minister.
加拿大总理特鲁多
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
印度总理莫迪
This is Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, met by President Xi inside the convention center. G20 summit is expected to take place very soon.
意大利总理伦齐
Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi.
日本首相安倍晋三
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, attending the G20 summit as an Asian country member of the G20.
英国首相特蕾莎梅
British Prime Minister Theresa May, all in red, being met by President Xi. French President François Hollande shaking hands with President Xi. And now we have Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto. Egyptian President Abdel Sisi. Chad President Deby. President Nursultan Nazarbayev of Kazakhstan. Argentine President Mauricio Macri. And we have Lao President Mr. Bunan Varachi. President Michel Temer of Brazil. Indonesian President Joko Widodo. Turkish President Erdogan. Senegal President Macky Sall. President of ROK, Park Geun-hye. South African President Jacob Zuma. U.S. President Barack Obama.
俄罗斯总统普京
Russian President Vladimir Putin. German Chancellor Angela Merkel. They're having some chit-chat there with Angela Merkel, President Xi. This is inside the International Convention Center in Hangzhou. And then the leaders of G20 economies and international organizations, they will line up to have a group photo, and then they will take the steps to the fourth floor where the G20 summit would take place. The venue of this place, the International Expo Center, is the main venue of the G20 summit by the side of the Qiantang River. We understand the Expo Center has a perimeter about 2 kilometers. That shows how large it is. 3 floors above the ground, 2 underground floors. And the Expo Center has 28 meeting halls and 12 exhibition halls. And the summit would take place in the largest hall inside the Expo Center. The G20 summit welcoming, opening, and closing ceremony, all of them would take place inside the Expo Center. And the media center is also there, bringing about 5,000 journalists from China and abroad to cover this year's G20 summit. So the world is looking forward to what these leaders will talk about, whether they can agree on some action plan and blueprints, how to turn world economy from sluggish growth to recovery, whether they can build on their consensus to have better integrated international governance in terms of financial institutions and trade and investment agreements. The group of 20, or other known as G20, is such an important forum for the world's largest economies, 20 of them. Its members include Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, France, Germany, India, Indonesia, Italy, Japan, South Korea, Mexico, Russia, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Turkey, United Kingdom, United States, along with the European Union. Of course, European Union has another more than 20 nations included. And the group was formally established at the G7 finance ministers in 2009. That was still a meeting between finance ministers and central bankers. And then it was promoted into leaders meeting in 2008 because of the financial crises. Now leaders will move to the fourth floor at the biggest meeting hall for the G20 summit. And they will have the first round of talks and discussions there. In the opening ceremony, President Xi will chair the meeting and deliver a keynote speech. We'll look forward to that, and we'll carry it live. He's accompanied by President Vladimir Putin, President of Indonesia, Joko Widodo. These are BRIC countries, the leaders of the BRIC countries. And the reason that why G7 has been evolved into G20 is probably because the industrialized nations cannot stand for world economy alone. That's why the addition of more emerging economies have been included. So you think there are going to be greater voices for the emerging economies as G20 mechanism evolve?
Well, BRICS has become really important and they have found their voice. China has established mechanisms such as the BRICS Bank as well as AIIB. So institution building is definitely happening right now. So yeah, the emerging economies found their voice. Now the question is, what do they have to say? Will they contribute in opening up their economies? Will they force changes in the economic structure of trade? Will they contribute to more globalization in times when actually the bodies that established this 40, 50 years ago are possibly looking into more contracting and withdrawing from globalization? So I think the voice of emerging economies, in particular China as the host, is extremely important.
And Mr. Zhang, as York mentioned, there are more and more voices from emerging economies. But the problem is, are their voices consensual on one topic, one agenda? Or maybe different emerging economies have their different agenda to be looked at?
I think that nowadays, actually, both developing economies and developing economies, actually, they are working for development for global. In that process, you may find that the role played by developing economies and developing economies are almost the same. Especially some of BRICS countries, now they become the driving force for global economy. In this regard, if you look at global governance and those rules and regulations, you may find that actually in the past mainly decided by the developing economies. So in this regard, when developing economies play a role, they will feel that maybe some of the rules and regulations are not so comfortable. Some of them maybe there are lack of some of new rules and regulations.
A lot of people are talking about rules being rewritten for global economy. What do you think might be the elements for the new rules with more voices and more weight carried by emerging economies?
Yeah, on one hand, if you look at global governance, economic governance level, you may find that WTO rules, as well as IMF rules and regulations, voting rights. So all of those issues are actually will be completely written. Those rules will be written and complete by all of those member countries. But on the other hand, if you look at regional level, so for mega FTAs, maybe some of countries, in case they want to formulate the new platform, such as TPP, TTIP, and then, of course, those relative countries, they will written their rules and regulations. But for RCEP, on behalf of developing economies, they will written, more comfortable for developing economies rules.
And the leaders have already entered the main hall for the G20 summit. It's a roundtable meeting for the leaders of the G20 economies. As we just talked about, there might be some discussions about what kind of rules might be in place. There seems to be some resistance from incumbent industrialized nations, especially the U.S., of resisting changes to the international organizations like IMF. Although the administrative branch may want to submit to this, but there is the Congress opposition to this. Where do you think it will go from here?
Well, I'm afraid it's not going to get any better when it comes to the United States. I mean, Obama clearly was a free trader. He was eager to change the IMF structure. Congress was basically preventing this. If Trump is the new president, anything can happen, certainly not for the better. And then if Hillary Clinton, we have to see how much of this anti-trade talk that she came up with is going to be solid, or if she changes tax. But in a way, we are going to difficult waters right now, and so we have to see how the structure maintains this pressure. And again, this is a very important meeting for those people to voice this and come up to prevent actually the slippery slope.
I think that's why China can't wait on the sideline for international organizations to reform itself. China initiated many programs. Do you think it is our agenda to maybe make change happen from outside the institution by launching AIIB and our own One Belt, One Road initiative to push other industrialized nations maybe to submit to the change that is happening?
Yeah, this is a very complicated issue. Actually, if you look at rules and regulations level, you may find that the Belt and Road Initiative, AIIB, and Silk Road Fund, this type of new mechanism or platform, they just provided new cooperation approaches instead of to written the new rules. But actually, TPP, TTIP are trying to write new rules and regulations. That's different role. But I like to say that today actually those existing rules and regulations cannot satisfy the development of global economy and regional economy. But for our BRI and AIIB are trying to find more comfortable and more appropriate for the European
it seems
economies.
it's become more and more attractive, especially to other parts of the world.
Yeah.
Can it be a game changer in terms of rules writing?
I think that maybe in the medium and long term, in case that those countries along the routes they feel comfortable and they want to rewrite some of new rules and regulations, that would be possible. But now I think it's too early to say like that. But now we are mainly focusing on very practical 5 types of connectivities, including policy dialogue, infrastructure connectivities, trade promotion, financial capital, support, as well as people-to-people connectivities.
Another thing is that I want to talk about that they want to coordinate their different policies in terms of monetary policy, fiscal policy, and even structural changes. What concrete results will come out of this G20 in terms of these policy coordination?
Well, I think we have seen the big bang already with the climate change, with this ratification that US and China have basically shown to the world what leadership does. I think that was possibly the biggest outcome we can expect actually has happened already. I think this is here a place where you possibly could talk about green growth, green financing. You have maybe Merkel chipping in
That's
migration.
one major milestone and accomplishment for the G20 mechanism, I think.
I must really say this agreement done, conducted by Obama and President Xi is in a way leading to implementation of Paris, which is extremely important. G20 provided the platform. If anything else comes out of this now, the next 1 or 2 days, we can be happy, but I think the big lifting has been done.
What about fiscal policy coordination? There are always debates about those surplus countries like your country, Germany, who should spend more, and those deficit countries like Greece, who should spend less. Which is the way forward? Which is the fiscal policy that is acceptable to all?
Well, Nobel Prize winners have been trying to figure out what is the venue there. I think demand stimulation is
we
very
have to cut you
important.
off, and this is President Xi giving his speech.
我现在宣布
Now I declare
，20国
that
集
the
团领导人
G20
杭
Hangzhou
州峰
Summit
会开幕。
now begins.
很高兴同大
Now
家
it
相
gives
聚
me
杭
great
州。
pleasure to meet you here in
首先，
Hangzhou, and
我仅对各位
first
同
of
事
all,
的
I
到来
wish to
表
extend
示
a
热
very
烈欢
warm
迎。
welcome to all of you.
去年
The G20 summit
，20国集
in
团集团领导人
Antalya
安塔利亚峰
last
会
year
开得很成
was a
功。
big success,
我也愿借
and I
此
wish
机会
to take this
再
opportunity
次感
to
谢
thank
去年
Turkey
主席国土耳
once
其
again
的出色工
for
作
its outstanding
和取
job
得的
and the
积极
positive
成果。
outcomes achieved during its presidency.
土方以共
Under
同
the
行
theme
动
Collective
以
Action
实现
for
包容和稳定
Inclusive
增长
and
作为
Robust
峰会主
Growth,
题。从包
Turkey
容落
brought
实
about
投资
progress in
3方面
inclusiveness,
推动
implementation,
产生
and
成果。
investment.
中方
China
一直积极
highly
评价
commends
土方在
Turkey's
担任主席
efforts
国期间
on various
开展的各
fronts
项工作。
during its G20 presidency.
未来2天，
In the next 2
我们
days,
将围绕杭
under
州
the
峰
theme
会
of
主题，
this summit,
就加强
we
宏观
will
政策
have
协调、
discussions on strengthening
创新增
policy
长方式、
coordination, breaking a new path for
更高
growth,
效的
more
全球经
effective and
济金融
efficient
治理、
global economic and financial
强
governance,
劲的
robust
国际贸易、
international
投资
trade and investment,
包容和联
inclusive
动式发
and
展，
interconnected development,
影响
as well
世
as
界经
other
济的其
issues
他突出问
affecting
题
the world
等议题
economy.
开展讨论。8年前，
8 years ago,
在国际金融危
at
机
the
最
height
紧要
of the
关头，
international financial crisis,
20个集团
the G20
临危受命，
acted in a spirit
秉持同
of
舟共济的伙
unity
伴精神，
and partnership,
把正在滑
pulled
向
the
悬
world
崖的
economy
世
back
界经
from
济
the
拉
precipice
回到稳
and
定。
pushed it
和复
onto
苏
the
的轨
track
道
of stability and recovery.
8年后的今
Today,
天，
8 years on,
世界
the
经济
global economy
又走向一
has
个关
again
键
reached a
关头。
critical juncture.
上一轮科技
The
进步
growth
带来的增
momentum
长动能
generated by the last round of
逐渐减
scientific
退。
and technological progress is
新一轮
diminishing,
科技和产业
while
革
the
命
new round of scientific
尚
and
未形成
industrial
势头。
revolution has just started.
主要经济体
Population
先后
aging
进入
is happening
老龄化社
in
会，
all major
人
economies,
口增长率
and
下
the
降，
decline in population
给各国
growth
经济社会
puts economic
带
and
来
social
压力。
pressure on countries.
经济全球化
Economic
出现
globalization
波折
is suffering
保护
setbacks.
主义
Protectionism
内部
and
倾向
inward-looking trends are on the
多
rise,
边贸易体制
and the
受到
multilateral
冲击
trading regime is under pressure.
金融监管改革虽有
Despite
明显
notable
进展，
progress made in financial regulatory
但高杠杆、
reform,
高
the
泡沫
risks of
等风
excessive
险
leverage and
仍
bubbles
在积极。
continue to build up.
在这些因素
Under the
综合
impact
作用
of
下，
all these factors,
世界经
the
济
global
虽
economy,
然总体保
while
持复苏
still
态
on the
势，
road to recovery,
但面临增长
faces
动力不
multiple
足
risks and challenges
需求不振
such as weak growth
金融
momentum,
市场反复
sluggish
动荡
demand, volatility in
国际贸易和
financial
投资
markets,
持
and
续
slow
低迷
growth in international
等多
trade
重风
and
险和
investment.
挑战。20国集
The
团
G20
聚集了世界
consists
主要经
of
济
the
体，
world's major economies.
国际社会
The
对我
international
们充
community
满
has
期待
great expectations for the G20
对这次峰会
and
寄予
places
厚
high
望。
hopes on this Hangzhou summit.
希望杭州
I
峰
hope
会
the Hangzhou summit
能够为
will
世
provide
界
a
经济
solution
开出
that
一剂
addresses
标
both
本
the
兼治、
symptoms and
综
root
合施
causes
策的药
of
方，
the global economic problems
让世界经
and
济
achieve
走上强
strong,
劲、可
sustainable,
持续、平衡、
balanced,
包容
and
增长。
inclusive global growth.
第一，
First,
面对当
in the
前挑
face of
战，
these challenges, we should strengthen macroeconomic policy coordination
合力
and
促进
jointly
全
promote
球经济
global
增长，
growth
维护
and
金融
uphold
稳定。
international financial stability.
20国
The
集团
G20
成员
members
应该结合
should
本国
pursue
实际，
more comprehensive
采取更加
macroeconomic
全面的
policies
宏观
in
经济政
keeping
策，
with their own national realities
统筹兼
and
顾
coordinate
财
their
政、
fiscal,
货币、
monetary,
结构性
and
改革
structural
政策，
reform policies
努力扩
in
大
order
全
to
球
expand
需求，
aggregate global demand,
全面改善
improve
供给
the
质量，
quality of supply,
巩固经济
and
增
bolster
长
the
基础。
foundation of growth.
应该继续
We
加强
should
政策协
continue to
调，
strengthen policy
减少
coordination and
负面
reduce
外溢
negative
效应。
spillovers.
第二，
Second,
面对当
in
前
the
挑
face
战，
of these challenges,
我们应
we
该创
should
新发
break
展
a
方
new
式，
path for growth
挖掘
and
增长
generate
动
new
能。
growth momentum.
20国集
The
团应该
G20
调
should
整政
change
策
its
思路，
policy approach
做到
and
短期
place
政策
equal
和中长期
importance
政
on
策
both
并重，
short-term and mid to
需求
long-term
侧管理
policies
和供
and
给侧
both
改革
demand-side
并重。
management and supply-side reform.
今年，
This
我们
year,
已经就
we have
20国
agreed
集
on
团
the
创新增
G20
长蓝
blueprint
图
on
达
innovative
成共
growth,
识，一致决定
and
通
we
过
have
创
made
新、
the unanimous
结构性
decision
改
to break
革
a new path and
新工业革
expand
命、
new frontier
数
for
字
world
经济等
economy
新方式，
through innovation,
为世界经
structural
济开
reform,
辟新
new
道路，
industrial
拓展
revolution,
新
and the
边界。
development of the digital economy.
第三，
Third,
面对当前挑
in the
战，
face of these challenges,
我们应该
we
完善
should
全球
improve
经济治理，
global economic
夯实
governance
机
and
制保
strengthen
障，
institutional safeguards. The G20 should continue to improve the international monetary and financial system and the governance structure of international financial institutions and fully leverage the role of the IMF's special drawing rights. We should strengthen the global financial safety net and enhance cooperation in financial regulation, international taxation, and combating corruption to boost the resilience of the world economy against risks. This year, we have restarted the G20 International Financial Architecture Working Group. I hope that the working group will continue its work and become more effective. Fourth, in the face of these challenges, we should build an open global economy and continue to promote facilitation and liberalization of trade and investment. The G20 should honor its commitment of not adopting new protectionist measures, strengthen coordination and cooperation on investment policies, take credible steps to stimulate trade growth. Infrastructure connectivity should be enhanced so as to bring developing countries and small and medium-sized companies into the global value chain and make the global economy more open and integrated. Fifth, in the face of these challenges, we should implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and promote inclusive development. According to relevant statistics, the Gini coefficient has exceeded the widely recognized alarm level of 0.6 and reached around 0.7 globally. This is something that we must pay close attention to. This year, development is high on the G20 agenda, and we have formulated an action plan to implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We will also support industrialization in Africa and the least developed countries, expand energy access, promote financial inclusion, and encourage the young people to start their own businesses. Through these means and more, we can reduce the inequality and imbalance in global development and deliver the benefits of global growth to people of all countries. Dear colleagues, the G20 carries high expectations of the international community. We must ensure that the G20 fully plays its role of keeping the world economy on the track of prosperity and stability. First, the G20 must keep up with the changing times and lead the way forward. The G20 should adapt itself to the needs of the global economy and further transform itself from a mechanism of crisis response to one of long-term governance. When major issues emerge, the G20 has the responsibility to play a leading role and, with strategic vision, set the direction and blaze the trail for global growth. Second, the G20 should fully honor its commitment. We should make the G20 an action team instead of a talk shop. This year, we have formulated action plans for many areas such as sustainable development, green finance, energy efficiency, and combating corruption. And each and every plan should be implemented. Third, the G20 should become a platform of cooperation built through joint efforts that delivers benefits to all. We should continue to strengthen the institutional building of the G20 to sustain and deepen our cooperation. We should solicit proposals for improvement and heed the views of all countries, especially the developing countries, so as to make the G20 more inclusive and better respond to the demands of people of different countries. Fourth, the G20 should stick together as partners in meeting challenges. The G20 countries differ in national conditions, stages of development, and face different challenges, but we all share a common goal of pursuing stronger growth, meeting challenges, and achieving common development. So long as we stick together, we can navigate the heavy waves of the global economy and sail towards a future of growth. Dear colleagues, in preparing for this Hangzhou summit, China has followed the principle of openness, transparency, and inclusiveness. And we have maintained close contact and coordination with all other members. We have also held outreach dialogue of various forms and listened to the views and proposals of various parties. I hope that during discussions in the coming 2 days, we will pool our wisdom and create synergy so as to enable the Hangzhou Summit to fulfill its mandate of boosting global growth, strengthening international economic cooperation, and promoting the future growth of the G20. Let's make Hangzhou a new departure point and steer the giant ship of the global economy on a new voyage from the shore of the Qiantang River to the vast ocean. Thank you.